My name's Chris Howland. I am the admin and founder of LA Sound Mixers, and this is a moderated panel discussion on a pre-selected topic, and we're really glad that everybody could join us. Our assistants for this chat is going to be Lampadinha and Adam Young, who is currently sitting in the COVID hold area at the Grammy Awards, waiting for his credentials. So when he gets home,
sorry.
Yeah, when he gets home, he will join us on his desktop. We also have Jana Lopez. She's going to be kind of the scribe, taking notes of what we're talking about, and she's also going to be helping managing the chat in the room and all that stuff. So really want to thank all those people for making time for us. Just a quick bit about LA Sound Mixers. LA Sound Mixers is a group based out of Los Angeles, but it's dedicated to mentorship and education for production sound and film sound professionals. One of the first things I learned in my internship was that this craft is more of a discipline. You never stop learning, and it's always something you get to practice, and you don't really get to master it. You're just lucky enough to practice it every day. So with that in mind, that's LA Sound Mixers was put together to help give people a resource to continue their education and networking and building their careers step by step, like so many of us have had to do across multiple generations. There's people that have worked in different eras of film and television, but so many parts of our journey, we can relate to them, and they are similar. So it's really nice to have, the generation that's a few steps ahead of us sharing with us that's coming up behind them. And then in turn, we get to share those people that are just learning that are a few years behind us. So that's the whole idea of LA Sound Mixers. And we're right now on Facebook, which is where the group is primarily organized. We also have an Instagram channel. We're on Discord as well, if that's more your speed. If you want to contact, with ideas for this podcast or for this video chat, you can reach out to lasoundmixer@gmail.com. That email goes straight to me. If you have questions or if you have show topic ideas, reach out to us, because that'll be, we're always, whatever panel discussions we have, the unofficial last member is always going to be you guys in the audience. So we're really happy that you can be here and be a part of this. I want to mention our sponsors. K-Tek is a boom pole manufacturing company. They also make sound bags. They make wind protection for microphones, a handful of products, and they really cater to the E&G mixer out in the field. And I even find a lot of uses for their products in narrative work. They've been a partner with us since the very beginning. 10 years ago when this group started. Brenda and then now Tino, who's joined the company, are just really great people that help support our mission. They've helped us organize and take our classes abroad. We took the our boom operators master class was taught by Ken Strain a number of years ago, and he rebranded it to the Boom Right Seminar. And with K-Tek, they've taken that class to Hawaii, Chicago, New York, Atlanta. And then we took a version of our panel discussion along with his class to a few years ago to Munich, Paris, London, and coming up in May, mid-May in 2023, we're going to go back to Berlin, and then the next week we'll be in Rome. So we're really looking forward to doing that. So we'll do a version of this chat live in front of an audience there, as well as Ken's Boom Right Masterclass, which will be in Berlin and Rome in mid-May. So look out for us there. It's going to be a lot of fun. So anyway, so a brief explanation about the topic here. We're going to cover the hierarchy of the film set and how it differs as the shooting style changes. I meet for coffee with a lot of new people coming in, and one of the most common questions is, I'll ask them, so what kind of work do you want to get into? And I usually get a blank look, because they really don't know all the different kinds of film sound, production sound that are out there. So they're still exploring. So I end up having to explain to them different mediums. And what I boiled it down to is features, episodic TV, commercials, documentary, and reality. And there may be some sub-genres in those categories, but those I feel like are the basic 5. And if anybody wants to chime in with something else that I might have forgotten, that'd be great too. So what we're going to talk about today is the hierarchy of each of those shooting styles, how they differ, and how, as the shooting style changes, how does that information flow on set change? How are you primarily engaged to those jobs? Are you talking to somebody creative? Are you talking to somebody more logistical? So that's kind of the stuff we'll cover. And I've worked in a lot of these genres. I'm mostly a narrative mixer personally, and I've worked in all the other genres, just not that much. So it was important to me to bring on a panel of people who can help kind of unpack this idea when we get to it. But I just want to briefly introduce all of them. Representing the documentary side is a friend of mine named Paul Graff. He worked on an amazing documentary years ago. He's been at it decades and has worked on some really amazing documentaries over the years. One of my favorites was 16 Right, which is a aviation documentary, which I love airplanes. So it was a really brilliant story. And there's also a companion to that called 16 Left, which is the making of 16 Right, where it really illustrates what they had to go through to get this story told and to get sponsorship and to get interest generated in order to make it. Really shows how it went from a small little backyard project to something that was majorly funded, and they were able to do what they wanted to do. It's a really amazing story. Anyway, please welcome Paul Graff. Hopefully he's here, and you'll see him when he starts talking, I'm sure.
I'm here.
Hey,
he's there. He's there.
Awesome. Hey. And then representing the commercial side is an old friend of mine who runs a shop here in town called Audio Department. He's also a very well-versed commercial mixer, almost has dedicated most of his career to doing that, aside from a few narrative projects, but he's a good friend and he really knows the commercial workflow better than anybody. His name is Gene Martin. Welcome, Gene.
Hey, Gene, good to see you.
Hey, Jeff, and everybody, and decades old Paul.
And on the reality side, a friend of ours, actually a friend of mine that worked with my wife on a few MTV shows back in the day. He's a reality audio mixer, and he's also a reality supervisor, and he and I happen to come from the same hometown of Lubbock, Texas. Welcome, Danny McCullough. So
hey, everyone.
Hey, Danny. And we have and for episodic and features, we have two people representing each one. So on the episodic mixer side, we have our good friend George Flores and Michelle Guasto. But George has been an amazingly prolific episodic mixer for many years. And I don't know if you guys saw in the posts. Oh, he's just now getting in the room. Here's George. Where I shared the links to the RSVP, I also shared the IMDb links for the panelists. So hopefully you guys can jump on and see those. But George has worked on a ton of shows. He's currently on NCIS. Yeah, we're really happy to have George Flores. Hey, George Flores. And also Michelle Guasto, who has just, is one of the rising stars, very busy mixer here in LA. I remember meeting her when she first moved here from Colorado, and it's to see her go from there to there has been really a fun ride to watch. And she mixes so many things. Michelle, you mixed the first season of Fatal Attraction, right? Was that the last thing?
Yeah, that ended late last year. And then,
sweet.
Yeah, some other pilots coming up next month. So
very good. Oh, that's awesome. Well, it's cool. We're glad to have you to help out with this discussion. And on the feature side, one of our perennial favorites, the amazing Jeff Wexler, who's worked on some of the most amazing films of our generation, and we're just really glad to have him here to help describe that workflow. And also from the feature side, I don't know if he's made it in yet.
I haven't seen Steve yet.
Steve Morrow. He's 3-time Oscar nominated on movies that are dialogue, but also very extensive music captures. La La Land, A Star Is Born, yeah, he's just an amazing guy. He the last time I worked with him was on Prey. He and I did B units for Prey. He was the B unit, or he was the additional photography mixer, and then he just called me in to do the double ups. But it was a lot of fun to just see him and work with him there. But Steve Morrow, hopefully he'll join us soon, and he's going to round out the panel. And as always, the unofficial last panel member is you, the audience. So use the raise hand function when we're picking through this. And if you have something to add, please add. Just keep it on topic, keep it short, but we'd love to incorporate, your point of view from around the world. So that'll be the topic. That'll be the panel. But first, here's the but first section. We're going to do a quick chat about current news and topics. Maybe some new gear that's come out. I know the new the DSR4 just came out. The And the Nexus came out. Has anybody had a chance to run this gear in just yet?
I can talk about the DSR-4.
Cool.
I knew I wanted them because I'm a heavy Lectrosonics user. I have, I think, 22 channels now, and both on cart, D squareds, and in bag. And I have been using their digital transmitter lineup and really wanted to be able to use that when I do bag work or even just corporate ENG, whatever, because I really like the quality of it, the stability of it, coming from years of digital hybrid transmitters. And I just took delivery on them. I guess it was a week ago yesterday. They just came in. I put my name first on the pre-order and built them. So far, so good. I have not really used them on anything complicated. So I kind of want to do a full range test and everything. I think that Lectra is going to be pushing out firmware updates for a while. It's just the way that it is nowadays.
Yeah.
But I know they've made improvements on their digital line lately. The rep at some of the events told me that they've been tuning and upgrading. They have new machines for testing. So I think the digital performance from Lectra is going to be getting better and better.
Yeah. That's cool.
But the units themselves are beautiful. They've got these new buttons on them that are tactile instead of the old SRCs,
the membrane switches.
Yeah, way better, way snappier. It's all of their new menu interface. And I mean, performance on mine was great. I was in a corporate building on Thursday, those big corporate high rises where it's like a really large floor.
Yeah.
I put my bag down, or I put transmitters down in one corner of the high rise, and I just put my bag on and walked the diagonal, the other corner of the office building, and still had full signal until the very other corner. So just on whips or bow ties like that, pretty good. The other thing I'll say, Chris, is just with the way wireless has evolved and DTV and everything, being wideband on everything you have is so almost essential nowadays, because you start tuning all your transmitters, and trying to fit into these pockets of wherever you are, being able to say, hey, block 21 really sucks here, but we're okay because we can put everything down to 470, or we can put stuff up at the top of the legal band. I find that to be really useful, and I do a lot of set visits behind the scenes or otherwise where they already have a frequency coordination where they've got the best real estate claimed, and you have to say, hey, just give me something in X range. And the more range you can accept, the better chance you're going to get something that's actually usable.
Nice. Well, that's cool. Yeah, and having that flexibility is huge. So yeah, I can't tell you how many episodic shows I've worked on where the mixer that shows up doing BTS, sometimes they won't ask, or they will come over, but they're very limited, and I've had to pull out 411s for them on specific blocks just to help get them through. So but yeah, it's nice to have that flexibility, especially if BTS and that kind of stuff is your wheelhouse. Then that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So that's good news then. Having 4 receivers inside one slot receiver is that's a big leap forward for us. So I think some of us who are old enough to remember schlepping around multiple 411s, whew, those are the days, right?
I still do.
You still do. What kind of job?
Adam? Oh.
What kind of jobs, Denny?
ENG.
Nice.
A lot of ENG bags.
Sweet.
Still rocking the 411s.
Dude, they're solid. They're solid. I still have them. I use them for various purposes around set, but mostly for like sending my mix to the VTR. I like to do that wirelessly now, and yeah, they still have a place. I can't really sell them all, but sorry. Anybody, somebody else have something to add?
Yeah. Hey, Adam, what transmitters are you using with those?
Hey, man. Yeah. So I've got kind of half my transmitters SMWBs, and then and HMAs. So the old guard as far as digital hybrid, and then I've got the new digital lineup, DBSMs, SMDs, and DPRAs, which I use on my cart mostly. I haven't tested the digital with them, but on digital hybrid, it felt good. It felt normal. It felt like like an 822 or an SRC for the first thing. But I haven't really used them haven't stress tested them yet.
That's cool. There was something, if nobody else has anything to add on the DSR4 or the other electro receivers, I was going to bring up something that a friend of mine sent to me. These things are ratchet straps from Rhino USA, and they're retractable. They're really, I mean, kind of next level. They have these locking things on the I guess, what do you call them, the hooks, and then and they're automatically retractable, so you can hit this button and then they just retract automatically, and then, you know, when you pull them out, you know, we've all, if you've loaded your carts onto trucks and to the D-rings and you push the carts together, you have very limited room, and usually the ratchet straps, the old ones, would require you to go the full range of motion to make them tighter. This is like, you just have to I mean, that's the full range of motion right there. It's like, it's a lot of torque, but it's a short range, so using it in tight quarters is really easy. Anyway, but yeah, my friend Lamps sent a few of these to me, and they're just, you know, really amazing. So if you haven't seen them and you do a lot of, you know, moving your stuff in carts, it's called Rhino USA. Really good. I mean, really amazing next level ratchet straps. There's really, I mean, and I'm looking at it, there's no place to get my finger caught in here. It's really easy to unlock it because you hit this green button here to unlock it and pull it. And so whereas the old ratchet straps, I would get my fingers caught in them, or it just felt dangerous. This really is, all the gears and stuff are protected in there. You're not going to get your hand caught in it. It's pretty cool, man. Lamps, how did you find these things?
I'm always digging on the internet after, you know, every single thing that it can be useful for some mixer and all set. And I was looking around and I saw this. Actually, Rhino is a company. They do things for trucks, you know, for towing trucks and off-road things. So they are really tough. And I was like, okay, so I tried so many different ratchet straps before, but when I saw this one, I was like, oh, this is mind-blowing. This is next level. Yeah. And I just bought a pack of 4 as well. And I was like, as soon as I got it in my hands, I was like, oh, this is really pro. It's going to be very helpful. And I started using, I have, you know, straps all around. I have in my car, I have in my house, in my daughter's car. So it's all around. So you never know when you're gonna need it, you know? Yeah,
I love it because the handle and a lot of it is covered in black plastic. So if you're in cold weather, you won't, you know, just grabbing those old metal ratchet straps were cold. It's just hard to do. And at the end of the day, it's like, that's the last thing I wanted to do. I mean, Lamps has loaded my carts in enough that I just, I get the stuff up the ramp or up the lift, and I'm just like, all right, you do it. I'm done. But it looks like Tira just shared the Amazon link to it. Thank you, Tira. So it's
I've used the Rhino stuff before from auto supply stores. Nothing as nice as what you've just shown. But that's because I stopped looking a number of years ago because I have bags full of ratchet straps, and I'm also retired, so don't have to look for that anymore. But that looks to be definitely a refinement of your basic ratchet strap.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Chris, I was gonna say I use ratchet Rhino straps too on my cart, but just, you know, the not that model, but I've been looking at ones like that, which I was thinking a cool idea would be. I got this idea from boat trailers. In the back of a boat trailer, you can mount a little unit like that, which retracts. And so retractable ratchet straps that I was thinking to put on my follow cart, because I'm a commercial guy, so I'm always loading and unloading carts from my van. Right. And I was just thinking how cool it would be to actually build that into your cart on either side, bolt them on so that you can literally just retract from that and attach the D-rings.
Yeah, I want to say, Gene, did you have something like that on your carts, on the sides? You had those rings that you could put on the cart.
Not the actual ratchet strap itself, but no, we put the motorcycle railing just for bolting things down. L-track, or not L-track. Actually, yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it is just smaller version of L-track, but yeah, little D-rings, but not the actual ratchet shelf itself, which I think is what Adam's mentioning.
Okay,
it might be cool.
Nice.
And I'm another fan of those ratchet straps. I switched to them or a similar brand 3 years ago, and every utility that comes on, and they love them.
Awesome.
So
What's
no pink
is it?
fingers.
It's a different brand. What were you able to
Yeah,
find?
I have to look on Amazon. It was
Okay.
something I purchased on Amazon, like a 4-pack.
Nice.
Yeah, they're great.
Very cool. Very cool. Another thing that another lamps discovery was that he turned me on to was a new IFB system called the Vocopro, which is they have a headquarters out here in LA, but it's a 900 megahertz IFB system that is not quite as companded as your normal Comtech system. So there's a little more air on top, but the price points were way different than Comtech, which is pretty amazing. I think you can buy a belt pack transmitter and 10 receivers for around $800, $800 or $900. And then they also have a matching half rack space, like base station type transmitter that you can buy for, I think, $250 or $300. The prices might have gone up since the last time I checked, but when you're buying these receivers, I mean, we're used to paying $300 or so for the Electros, I'm sorry, for the Comtechs, but these Vocopros are averaging out to about $80 a piece. And, they're a little different, but they still have, is it 16 changeable frequencies over the 900 megahertz range. And there's parity between the belt pack transmitter and the base station transmitter. So you can have the belt pack one on your bag and power that down and power your base station on your card up, and all your receivers still work. So it's based, it goes from 900 to 925 megahertz. Michelle just posted the link. Thank you of what she's using for ratchet straps. Thank you very much. But so yeah, the Vocopro stuff. I don't know if Lamps, you have the links to that stuff. I know they sell a lot of them on Amazon. But yeah, it's a really good low cost alternative to Comtex. I know for if I do go and I do commercials every now and then, not with any regularity, but I bought a separate transmitter and 24 receivers that I just keep set aside. I use them as loaners for people who are coming up who might need an IFB, but I have them set aside for commercial use when I have a large client village or something like that I want to run on a separate feed. It's a easy thing to set up and run. So, but yeah, Vocopro, another thing. Lamps, did you just find that on a Google search too?
Actually, I don't remember where I found that, but Vocopros are a very good alternative, even for those who are starting their sound package. It's really good because it's now it's a little bit more than 800. I think it's around $1,000. You can buy 10 receivers and 1 transmitters. Yeah. But when you're starting your career, it's pretty good. I'm not saying that is going to substitute any kind of Comtech or any other Lectrosonics, but it's a very good alternative for those who's starting. So you can buy a pack of 10 and you're gonna have more than you need, for a ENG kind of work. So it's pretty good. I don't remember what I found it, but I was there at headquarters and they're big. It's not a small facility.
You went and visited them.
Yeah,
okay.
and they're really big. They have so many different product lines. Is this one here actually? It's for karaoke.
Okay. I noticed a lot of karaoke stuff on their website, like speakers and things that take out the vocal and that kind of stuff.
And I was like, oh, this is I think this is gonna work on set. And I just bought a pack of 3 at a time, I guess. And I started using for commercials as well. So, and now I have 25 and I just drop it Video Village, and I had so far 0 complaints about it.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. They take AA batteries instead of 9 volts, but you can put rechargeables in there, and they there's what do you call it? There's a port on the side, a little charging port, so you can actually charge it like you would your phone if you wanted to, or pop fresh batteries in whenever you want. Yeah, and it's and they actually have, I think the receivers actually have 2 3.5 millimeter outputs on each one. So you could run 2 sets of headphones from each receiver if you needed to.
And on transmitter, you have a TA3 connector as well. So you can use microphone input for sending signal. And people probably they're asking about the range. The range, it's incredible. You're not going to believe it. You know, you can go so far away with just one small transmitter like this.
Yeah, I first started using it on the double ups for Insecure, which was last year or the year before. And it was a fairly busy set. We had 2 sets running, and the range was very comparable to what our Comtex that we were already using. And you know, that's been the good thing about Comtex is they run on the 216 megahertz frequency range, which is in America set aside for the hearing impaired, for assistive listening in movie theaters. But we are able to use them as well. And so usually there's nothing else going on down in that frequency range. It's a longer antenna for it, but the range is usually really good. And at 900 megahertz, a smaller wave, I was a little skeptical about how the performance would be. But it was very even in the busy set with all the DMX lighting, wireless DMX lighting going on, wireless focus pulling, wireless monitors, everything. It still held up pretty well. So
yeah, the only I had just only one day that one remote had in a stage. The remote had killed all RF on set practically. So
same, yeah.
All lights, all Vocopros, everybody was down. So it was crazy because this remote head is so powerful, and I think it's even against the law. I don't know, but it kills everybody. So that was the only opportunity that I had that was like, oh, this is not gonna work, and I hardwired everything.
Steve Morrow and I sussed out that problem. He was having problems with his IFB on Prey, and he called me to see texted me because I was not too far away from him. He's like, what frequencies are you running? We frequency coordinated and it was fine. But after lunch, the big crane with the remote head went from his set to our set, and then I had issues. And I was like, wow. So I texted him back, are you all clear now? He's like, yeah, we're fine. I'm like, well, I think we know where our problem's coming from. And then the same thing on, we did the additional photography for a movie called Me Time. And they pulled this, we were doing all the skydiving stuff at the beginning of the movie. And it was all green screen and big Ritter fans and stuff. But the techno jib with the remote head, somebody said it was like, it was designed to be remote controlled from a couple of miles away. And I was like, geez, and sure enough, as soon as they turned it on, it slayed the Vocopros. Like the Comtex were still working, but the Vocopro was, whatever was in 900 megahertz just it got killed. So I ended up having to, having to set up an alternative for that day anyways. But anyway, Denny, you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if anyone remembers if you need FCC license to operate in 900 if you were to get these Vocopro system.
That's a really good question. I would think that for them to manufacture it and sell it, they would have to have FCC clearance because they would assume it would be used here. And there's other systems that we use in the 900 megahertz range already. So I'm not an authority on this. I have my low power auxiliary broadcast license, but I don't think it's mandatory. Does anybody else know?
I don't think so, because the company, they're selling things for karaoke, so it's
okay. Danny just wrote in the chat that he says only if it's over 100 milliwatts. So I would believe Danny. So
thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And if anybody else has other info, let us know.
I was gonna say I use them a lot for my commercial work in Dallas.
Okay.
They're only like 10 milliwatts. So yeah, I don't think you would need a license for that.
Yeah. And I think even the, what is it? Even the regular Comtech base station tops out at 100 milliwatts too. So anyway, very good. So keep an eye out for that system. I would say if you were looking for a low cost alternative and you need to buy something sight unseen, Amazon has a great return policy already, but But yeah, give them a whirl and see if they work for you. You know, a lot of it depends on all the other stuff that's going on in your situation, but it's definitely worth a shot. So, but cool.
Christian Ramirez, he has a question.
Yeah, Christian.
You're muted.
Christian, well, let him get sorted. Julian Andrews had a question about what do we use for headphones, and with Comtex and Vocopros. I've used a lot of the Halter technical headphones, and yeah, my only pet peeve with them is the little foamies fall off sometimes, so I spend my time putting them back on. I've gotten quite good at it. I can do it fast, but yeah, I use those, and then I also use I have the little Sony headphones that kind of fold flat. I found those on Amazon for $10 a piece, and I bought those, and I put the little, you know, my little work sticker to identify them. Put those on there. So yeah, it's either the Halter Technicals or those the Sony headphones.
Chris, I put a link in the chat of a set that I found on Amazon, and I really like them. I have over 20 of them. They're foldable. They feel premium compared to like many of, like, you know, the old classic like Location Sound, Comp Gray. They feel much nicer than that. In fact, with the ear pad. So they are single cable, which is important to me. I hate the double cable Comtech. Personally, I hate the ones that go to each ear.
Yeah.
Because it's just much harder to manage wrapping. And they're cheap. And I've been using them on all my commercial stuff for quite a while. So I put that link anyway. You guys can check them out. I do recommend them. Nice.
Very cool. Very cool. Blas Kisic is singing your praises in the chat. And yeah, and thank you, Blas. ZX100s for the Sonys. But yeah, and Blas is already buying them. Jeez, man, no self-control. Blas.
This is how we do it.
That's how it works. Like a horde of locusts buying stuff. Well, that's cool. Another thing that Halter Technical came out recently was this this Microsone, which is it is an answer to in-ear wireless IFB monitoring, and it's been pretty cool. There was a bit of a thing where in manufacturing they changed the Bluetooth chip without telling him, so it changed some of the compatibility. Anyway, he's fixed that problem, and I just took them into his office, and it literally took him, you know, 2.5 minutes with each unit to just update the firmware and give me new in-ears. But they're, you know, they work really well. They're designed to work with any wireless system that you already have. You just set this to the same frequency that your transmitter's putting out, and then it Bluetooths from the control pack to the in-ear, and you can use both in-ears at the same time if you have one feed in a car and you want to put one in each ear if you have a passenger and a driver. And there is a delay from the Bluetooth side of things. So personally, I don't know that I would be able to use them for music playback or lip syncing. I think the delay would be a little too much for that. But it's definitely good for intimate communications, just in the ear, discreetly. I got a pair, and I bought these. I got, you know, a pair in the cocoa, and then a pair in the tan. But yeah, you know, looking forward to trying them out. And I've used them and listened to them. They sound great. They sound clear. You know, and it's a good low-cost alternative to like the Rogers system, which is also really great for in-ear monitoring, but those are just much more expensive. So this is this came in at a price point which I think is pretty pretty welcome in our line of work, because, you know, companies charge us a lot of money for stuff. But so this is check it out. It's it's there. If you're in LA and you want to hear it, I'm sure they'll do demos for you. And you're always welcome to reach out to me and check it out. But yeah, good on Doc for putting that together. I hope he already has ideas on ways he wants to help make our lives easier. So good on him. Really appreciate him for that. Cool. So we'll move on to our panel topic, the hierarchy of the film set and how it differs as the shooting style changes. I'm primarily I would say narrative, which is features and episodic TV person. And that was one of the first things I had to learn when I was on set on my internship, was how the information flowed on set. And it was a little different. The hierarchy, even from features to episodic TV, is a little different. For those of you who have done both on the panel, I know Michelle's worked movies, Jeff's worked movies, and Jeff, you worked some episodic TV as well, although not as much.
Very, very little episodic TV, like one or two things, but mostly features and quite a few documentaries. But
yeah. But as far as that, when you're on the set sussing out what to do next, I mean, I know for all of us, no matter what medium we work in, we live and die by the flow of information. We can't make our plan until we know what their plan is. And we need to know the workspace we're working in, and we start to define our areas and what we need to cover and how we need to do it. So, between features and episodic, is there a difference? And what would you say is the difference in that flow of information?
I can speak on it a little bit. So
Please.
one change I've noticed is with features, you frequently are going directly to the director. With TV shows, a lot of TV shows have directors that are just there for that episode, so they're almost kind of like the guest. So in terms of getting information, sometimes you can go to the director, but if they're not that experienced, which I have worked with many like first-time directors are kind of breaking into TV and maybe they want to do features later, but we'll get our information from the AD or frequently the second. So that kind of workflow is different with just trying to get information. If you run into problems, sometimes again you can talk to the director, but frequently you'll talk to the AD or you'll talk to a second. Or sometimes the DP. I mean, that can kind of carry over, but that's the main difference I've noticed is you're not always going directly to the director.
So in features, you go to the director. That's your primary, source. But on episodic TV, yeah. Like if it's an 8-day episodic, every 8 days you get a new director.
Yeah. So you've established a workflow already with, your regular ADs, the DP, to get information and maybe ask to shoot something separately. Maybe they have a wide and tight. Sometimes I would go directly to the DP to ask if we can shoot this separately instead of going to the director.
I was actually amazed when I discovered that on episodics and things like that, where they change up the directors, because I mean that just doesn't happen in features. I mean, sometimes it happens that someone could get fired, but there's a kind of continuity that once you've established it, if part of what you're getting at with the hierarchy, Chris, is who you're accountable to. That's something I'd like to talk about, because I was fortunate enough in my career that I was always able to have good relationships with everyone involved very early on. I mean, we'd have a lot of pre-production time where you would get to know people, and you could actually be involved as a partner with, deals, that the art things that the art department was dealing with, they knew would impact what you're going to do, and you could have discussions about things. And the crews were smaller also, so that there wasn't this thing where it wasn't as easy for them to marginalize the sound department because the whole department, usually just me and, and a boom operator in the early days before a 3-man crew became pretty much the standard. You'd be right there on the set. There wasn't a lot of walkie-talkies. There wasn't a lot of, you would never have the situation where the sound mixer was like way off the set. And a lot of people on the crew didn't even know who the sound mixer was. So who you're accountable to has changed a lot as sound mixers, partially for their own protection, have separated themselves from the set, and often the boom operator and even the utility person is more the front person for the whole department.
Right.
And even the utility person, particularly because of all the wiring that goes on, if the utility person's doing the wiring, they're often in a much more fully developed relationship with the actors than the sound mixer is. And whereas in the old days, since the sound department was very small and we weren't wiring people, our relationship with the actors, our relationship with the director, with the DP and all that, were just so much easier to put together. And it made the whole job so much more enjoyable because everyone wasn't always figuring out ways to keep people divided or separated. And, you know, there wasn't this whole division between post-production and production. You know, I would talk to the people in post because often the people in post were hired at the same time I was, even before we started shooting. You know, we talk about, well, you know, scene 23 where you've got all this music or whatever, you know, we'd have all these discussions, and that's all changed now. And that when you show up often as the sound mixer, the information that you're getting is, you know, a second coming up to you in the morning with a call sheet and saying, okay, we're going to wire number 2, 3, 7, and 9. And after lunch, we have the following actors. This is before you've even seen, you know, and I've only heard this.
Right.
I've never done it myself. Before you even see a blocking of the scene or even know what, you know, what the actors even sound like or anything. And
yeah, that definitely happens. It's, you know, it's because with 2 and 3 camera shooting, it's just having a viable source on each actor is
and I was also lucky that when I you know originally hooked up with Don Coufal, who was just the most amazing human being ever in terms of his work ethic and obviously his creative abilities as a boom operator. I had no problem with him running the set completely because he was in a much better position to know what was going on. I would always have an open mic so I could always hear what was going on, but he was always many steps ahead of me. And there'd be times when I'd get ready to come onto the set, if I was a little bit off the set, and Don would just hold up his hand like, you know, I've got it. And he did have it. And, you know, there'd be times when it took a director a while to learn that he really could, you know, a director, he or she could talk to Don and they would get the same answer that they would get from me, or maybe even a better answer. And we take care. So, you know, I relied on Don immensely, which also relates to the hierarchy of who's dealing with what, you know, so that people would go to Don first and Don in turn,
like the first layer of the onion, you know.
Absolutely. And Don would go to other departments, and they ended up relying on Don to solve their problems because, you know, he was such a team player, you know. But so much of that is
about, you know, proximity and availability too.
So much of that has gone out the window with the current shooting styles, where they pretty much have decided that a measure of good sound is I hear them talking, and I don't have to loop.
There's definitely a few different approaches now to it. It's now not just a matter of perspective. They want to, you know, they want to have the flexibility of remixing and you know, doing all these different.
And also it goes over even to the camera department in that it used to be that everyone had to be really well versed in picture editing to understand how things go together. So the camera operators, you know, I remember one of the TV shows that I did, which was just a pilot, they were about to shoot the second camera, and I knew it was going to be a terrible angle that would not cut with anything. So I decided, do I go to the director and discuss this, or the DP, or maybe I'll just go to the operator and ask him. So I went to the operator, and I said, your shot. I said, how are the looks? He said, oh, it looks great. I didn't even know the vocabulary. In the old days, when we would say, how are the looks, we're talking about screen direction look, where there's somebody, when you cut this together, is this person really going to be looking at the other person? You know, the eye lines and all. And this is an operator that didn't even understand that eye lines were important.
True. And usually the script supervisor would have to jump into that discussion.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
There, but yeah.
Of course, you know, but this is a younger operator who had done only TV, and you know, you ask the operator to say, well, I got 2 people in my shot, I got 3 people in my shot, well, I got 4 people in my shot. You'll never get the boom in there. You know, so I know we're kind of going off topic here. I'm sorry.
It's getting worse.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, go ahead. I wanted to get to Naan. Naan had a question earlier. She was patiently waiting, so I wanted to get to Naan if that's possible. But
hi guys. I was basically what Jeff said.
about the about the communication and the hierarchy. I have my team and I have walkies because doing fast-paced television, things change on a like so fast, and also they'll switch scenes and stuff and not tell anybody, and so we have to prep and everything. So just listening to a walkie, I always have one on my car dialed into my headphones.
Wow.
It's just like, that's our secret weapon.
Absolutely necessary. Yeah, but I never had to do that, fortunately. And they used to come to me and say, "Do you want a walkie?" And I said, "No, I don't."
Yeah, I was reluctant for quite a few years, but then after I was like, okay, this is one of the best tools, and now we just can't live without it.
Cool. So Paul, how does this relate to you when you're on documentary stuff, when you're waiting for your flow of information to figure out what you're going to do? How does that differ in documentary shooting?
Well, it's interesting hearing. It really made me smile hearing Jeff talk, because I think a lot of when he was kind of like reminiscing about the simpler older days of features, that's a lot of part of what drew me to liking to work on documentaries. So I mean, to keep the focus, and also feel free to chime in, Jeff, because it's like, since the focus of today's discussion is the hierarchy of the film set, some things are timeless. It's not like if it was a technical discussion, a lot of things move very fast, and obviously in my world too, there's you're patching into things, and there's a lot of technical stuff. But I remember early on, first of all, it's funny that I still am riding the credibility of 1/6 Right, which was 2004, I think.
Yeah.
Pretty early in but it was really, really fun. And it also, I think that's, I all I wanted to do is be a boom operator when I started, but I think that also was kind of that working on that really seeded the being all at Van Nuys Airport and just seeing behind the scenes and learning all these, just learning about my city and learning kind of being a fly. That's what I love about doc. You're like a fly on the wall at these worlds, like people who live and breathe dog breeding or basketball or different things, and you're just like this guest in their world. But to keep the focus on the hierarchy, I mean,
well, the director,
be specific your question, otherwise I have a few things.
The director on 1/6 Right, he was, from what I understand, was a pretty technically savvy director, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he, that could, because there's and it was funny, I think Canary
smiling.
He was an aviation nut.
Yeah. But he I think Canary posted that where is it? Yeah, she said she worked with several green directors last year back to back and had to rely on ADs a lot. That sussing out your director is like the kind of, no matter what style of shooting or your creative nucleus, if you're in reality, which Danny can chime in on that, but if you're following the creatives and trying to come up with logistical solutions for their vision, in terms of the shooting style that you're working in, when it came to like 1/6 Right, from what I've read about that director, he is pretty technically savvy with sound. Like he knows what he should be hearing. He's, and that can be a good
documentary directors are very, there's also, I'll start saying, saying all the reasons I like working in them is, they're much more, the good ones are much more, they're cognizant of that sound really is. I mean, I'm doing this thing now, and the director said, "Well, Paul, sound's half the movie." And I'm like, wow, that's music to my ears, but, and that's what because he wants everything that way. So, but someone said to me early on, I remember there's the technical, there's the physical, and there's the social. And I was like, that kind of captures it kind of nicely, because, it can be a really physically demanding job. And, and just coming to what you talk about, I mean, in every aspect of our world, it's a business of relationships. It's all about relationships, and people hire people because they like having them around. And I think that that's even more true on a documentary, because on a documentary, like the director, the DP, and the producer and me go out to dinner, and we talk about where we're going out to dinner after, that night.
Well, it's because you're partners in the discovery. That's the thing,
and you're talking about, so so that's a big part of it. So it's, on one hand, it's much more egalitarian, but on the other hand, you also have to really be cognizant that, you your buddies and you're talking over dinner, but then when you're in different environments, it's like they're still the director, they're the boss. You don't want to go chime in and join their conversation with the talent after the interview, like, and I've seen people make that faux pas. Like you still, you know who the boss is, and you know when.
Too much schmoozing, yeah.
Yeah, you know when to speak up, when to not speak up, and you also just, you read the room. I mean, the good directors I work with ask, at the end of the interview, they go, "Did I miss anything? Does anyone else have a question I should have asked?" And they'll and they're the best idea wins kind of attitude instead of the ego. But then there's other people who don't want to hear anything from you, and you just have to like know that or not. And so, I can go on for a couple minutes about like what I think is important, or you can lead the. Just let me know how this works. But
we just want to get a feel from from when you're on a documentary set. How are you? I guess I should say when you come in contact with a project, are you usually attached to the creative element, or is it the shooter that brings you in, or because it's a smaller crew situation, sometimes it's travel.
It's either. I mean, a lot of things. I do a lot of stuff for BBC or different British production companies. So a lot of times, that's actually a whole nother discussion. Is in the different. Depending what genre of production you're in, who hires you? Like
sure,
jobs. And frequently they hire the like BAFTA winning cinematographer, and they say, "Who's your sound person? Like, who do you like to work with for sound?" So, but that doesn't always happen. So it can be the director, it can be a production manager that worked with me on something else, and they're coming to LA and they can't and the other thing is, sometimes, actually quite a few projects I'm on like the whole thing. And then, sometimes it depends on the nature of documentary. If it's archival or it's interviews and we're interviewing somebody in Taiwan, we're interviewing, obviously they're going to use a lot of locals. So you're not necessarily on at all. But
one of the shows you just worked on, the George Carlin talk. Yeah, I mean that got,
right?
Yeah,
right.
Well, it got nominated.
I wrote to CAS and said, please remove my name from this nomination. I was
for those that don't know, it got nominated for a CAS award, and Paul was the one production mixer listed.
Yeah, and they were like, I wasn't the main person. I was like an additional sound mixer. I did like 10 interviews in LA. So and they're great interviews. Everything was great, but I'm like, I'm not taking credit as like the production sound mixer on this.
It's kind of maybe all of them are so Paul so Paul wrote was like all of them or all of us or none of us kind of thing. So
Chris, when you mentioned that thing about who hires you, that when I first heard the topic about the hierarchy and who you're accountable to, it kind of changes the whole dynamic depending on who hires you.
Yeah, I mean, what I've experienced in features and in episodic TV is that sometimes you're hired by somebody who's more logistical in nature, like a line producer or a UPM. But then there's other times when you're there because you have a relationship with the creatives on the show.
Yeah,
and I've had both situations happen. And I got to say, being attached to the creatives is by far the nicer way to go.
But also, Chris, when you say the creatives, I mean, for example, when I just said about being recommended by someone in post, do you consider post like creative people, or you fall in the same category everybody else does? Whether those are just technicians, I mean.
No, so I think if you were recommended to the director by a post person, then you're there because the director wants you there. I would consider that the creative.
Yeah.
So I would consider that being attached to the creatives. I think there's a few mixers around town that have relationships like that with some of the talent they work with, and they go from those same filmmakers. I wanted to move over to Danny McCullough, and Danny, I would love for you to kind of chime in on your world. Can you briefly walk us through just the different types of reality shooting there is? I know there's like I've done competition elimination reality that was on a stage. I know there's shows like X Factor, there's shows and then there's house reality. Can you just quickly walk us through the different genres, maybe that you have direct experience with, and maybe the differences between those, and then
I mean,
from there we'll piece out the the flow of information on those shows.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty wide genre, and what I do is pretty wide. I mean, I came from the world of episodics, features, and docs years ago, and moved into this at the very early start of kind of reality TV. I did Junkyard Wars and shows like that early on, which kind of morphed into reality and real world. But right now, I mean, I'm 50-50 kind of like house-based dating reality shows, and then I'm also, the other 50% of my work is live, either live to tape or live, like award shows, game shows, talk shows. I do a lot of work in trucks, make some trucks a lot. But as far as straight reality and the hierarchy on those sets, like, is a complete crapshoot. And so is the shoot usually. I mean, I do Temptation Island every year, show in Hawaii, and I don't actually mix on that show. And a lot of those bigger shows, I don't. I'm there as the supervisor. I set the show, I come in, do all the scouts, order all the gear, use a lot of my own gear, set the show up. I'm RF coordinator. I set every show now has a PL on it. I'm doing all the coordination of PLs. I'm doing the PL install. We do the house install where we install mics into every room. We have 60 cast, 17 crews, all the RF coordination for that. So
is the PL system primarily for like camera or for different people to talk to different people?
Yeah, it's a lot for director to talk to camera, but producers use it now. I own 2 reel systems. I just bought a 1020. Yeah, I just bought a 1024 frame, and I have 60 bell packs that I take shoot to shoot to shoot. Nice. And then I have a standalone system as well. I know it's starting to become a lot more popular on straight film sets from people I've talked to who do film work.
Yeah,
but so that's just the communication side of these shows is the biggest deal. Everybody wants a way to listen to everybody, be it in the control room. We're building a control room out. I'm mixing on a CL5 or a Studer or a CalRec or whatever I have in the control room.
Right.
And then, but as far as how we get information, every show has a showrunner or usually a set of showrunners. They're over the director, telling the director what to do. I'm getting my information either from the director or generally, especially on a stage kind of talk show, game show, it's all coming through the stage managers or the booth AD. And those are the people that I get, me and my A2s and my RF guy, whoever's on set, we get all our information that way. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, as far as a reality show, I find that, like, I feel like more of a plumber, if that makes any sense. Like, I'm just trying to get every mic and every source recorded to something all the time, be it the NG guys or we've wired an entire house for RF and we're recording 60 sources all day, 24 hours a day. Right. But if I kind of prefer the live workflow because I like to sit down, mix a show for 2 hours live, get the sound as good as I possibly can for live TV, and walk away. So, it's kind of a juggling act either way. And there's good and bad, things going on both ways. But I would say most of the info starts with showrunners through the director, through the stage manager, and straight to us. But communication is a big deal on these shows because I've done so many shows where I find out the day of, hey, we're going to add 20 cast members today. Like, things like that just happen. And so I have to really stay on stage managers and the execs, days ahead of time to try to bring this stuff up and not find things out an hour before it's supposed to happen because they think that you can magically just have 20 more people mic'd.
Yeah.
So,
that affects your, the size of your crew. I mean,
what is RF is the big deal. These days.
What is the typical size of your crew on I would say like a house reality show or?
So to Temptation Island, we have, let me think. I mean, I did a show for Hulu last year, the same company. We had 18 mixers, 18 ENG mixers. We had 6 A2s. So because we had, everything was in shifts. I'd usually have 2 A2s on time. Mm-hmm. A couple of A1 mix positions, on CL5s or QL1s in the control room. I had an RF position during load-in. We usually have like a 2-week load-in build or something like that. And then I would have PL, a couple of PL guys working 24 hours a day or however long, because these shows shoot almost 24 hours a day. So we're very crew heavy. We employ a lot of people. Nice. So, and then live show, not quite as big. Like I'm doing movie awards this year in a couple of months in May. I'll have me, booth A2, 4 to 6 A2s on set. We have music, right. So I'll have music A2s. We'll have band A2s, front of house mixer for the audience, right. RF coordinator. You know, so I mean we're very, very crew heavy. So right. we pay a lot of dues to 695. And so, through our shows.
Yeah. And a lot of that information from the creatives and from the ADs that has to come straight to you, and then you delve it out to your team and delegate.
Yeah. And we have there's a lot of set meetings, you know, normally a show like that, especially a show in the field. I was in the Dominican Republic last year. We had meetings every 2 to 3 days. So we knew, you know, per episode, we usually episodes 3 days. We know exactly what's about to happen. We have to know the questions to ask too. And plus, if we're out in the middle of nowhere, like the Dominican Republic, we only have so much gear that we bring with us. I bring as much as I can, but there's a lot of creative decisions we have to make in the field to try to come up with very creative ways to do things when they suddenly say, hey, we're doing a party and there's a full band. And, oh, we don't have a PA. We don't have a mixer for that. You know, things like this happens. And so it's a lot of workarounds, basically. And I feel like, and Paul was saying as well, like the world of documentary was great. That's where I was really came from, because you're the lone mixer on the set, lone mixer in a jungle or whatever you're doing, and you're figuring every single thing out, and you're also troubleshooting every piece of equipment. And usually you're looked at as the tech guy on the set. Right. So you have to coordinate with every other department. So I think that background really helped me moving into this world.
Alex just posted in the chat here, what does PL stand for? And
private line.
Private line.
Yeah. I mean, it's a misnomer, because it can also stand for party line.
Right. So somebody said that as well, party line.
Yeah. So it's kind of a misnomer, but it's a glorified walkie-talkie system, if you want to think about the
communication system.
Yeah, communication. Yeah, that like it's open. It's a full duplex system, so everyone, it's like a walkie. You can key it, and everyone one key at a time. On a PL, everyone can talk at once, which is good or bad, I guess. It can be a problem, but I feel like in the past 4 years, it's, you know, the live TV world, we all in the truck world, in the stage world, we always used PL for years, even when I was working in England years ago. But it's starting to really creep more into TV world. I'm seeing, and I've talked to episodic and to feature mixers, and they're saying this. They're seeing, I've talked to people out in the field who's saying that it's getting more and more requested on sets. So standalone Riedel systems. So it's a big investment, but it pays off to own one. Anyone out there wants to go into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the Riedel systems and the Bolero systems.
Yeah.
And it's camera likes to use them a lot, just for the DP to talk to the camera operators, which can make it really interesting for the boom operator who's standing next to them, because that flow of information, you're used to hearing the DP talk to the operators in the air, and now it's over a comm system, and you don't hear anything as a boom operator. You're just standing next to you're watching them reframe, and you're like, okay, what are we doing now? And
it's a problem, because you can't wear headphones underneath your headphones, right? So you can't wear a PL and mix a show. When I'm in a truck, I have open PL usually, so I have my speakers or surround speakers or whatever in the truck, and I also have 3 to 6 different PL channels blasting everywhere.
That's crazy.
So I can, especially if it's a live show, so I can figure out what's going on, and I kind of know what to listen for. But it can be a little frustrating.
That must kind of fry your brain at some point. It's
it can. Yeah, sports is the craziest. So I used to do a lot of sports. So.
It was so funny. I visited the mixer for who does the Dodgers broadcasts, and
Anthony.
Yeah, I got to visit him once, and it was really insane to see how dialed in he had it. I mean, he was literally had his PL coming from one place, he had his mix, and then and we had a chat back and forth, and then he's watching a golf channel thing or something on a TV, and he's listening to that at the same time.
I don't know how people do that.
That's how it distracts his brain. And then I was like, hey, we just started talking, and I just remember him saying, it's like, yeah, if you really want to get into doing this style of mixing, he's like, pick a sport with a clock. Because he said, because baseball is extra innings, and it's just
there's a lot of I've done a lot of NBA. I used to do lots of NBA, and it was always good because you're bound by the time of the game unless you go to overtime or whatever. But yeah, it's you're looking forward to halftime, so at least then you can run to the bathroom. That's always the big thing on those shows. But like, there's a lot of things going on at the time, and you're responsible for every single thing in the truck, all music playback, every source, every BT playback, everything. So, but it's fun. It's I like the live event. It's you've really got to be on your toes. So
true. Yeah, there comes a point where everything is going to get rolling, and you just have to be in the right place.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. I that motivation really helps me out when I'm working on set. Like we're all working towards the next setup, and at some point they're going to call the actors, we're going to final frames, and then they say roll sound, and it's like, all right, I like that. It's good to work in a situation where I'm propelled forward in that respect. But that's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Does anybody have any questions for Danny? I'll say that there's talks of a writer strike coming up this summer, and I remember the last one that happened in 2009, and it was so many shows shut down, and some studios were able to keep going because they banked scripts leading up to it, and so they had stuff to shoot. But the reality TV people and sports all kept right on merrily working because it's unscripted. So you might come strike time, you might get a lot of phone calls, people looking for work. But very cool.
I also wanted to touch base or talk about how the PL system has changed in episodic even the last few years. It seems like kind of the reality workflow is creeping in, and while we're rolling, especially on comedies, the DP will be talking to their 3 camera ops, and their frames are constantly changing. So I'm constantly communicating in my slate mic to my boom ops.
Wow.
They're now a close up, jump in, you have 2 feet of headroom here. Oh, they widened out, back up. So it's been a little frustrating, but it's extremely important to keep that communication with your crew. As you see, the cameras are constantly adjusting, and everything.
So the whole normal formality of a rehearsal and a blocking, and now we're going to shoot this angle, that just goes away, right? I mean,
it seems like comedies when they're on zoom lenses. Yes. I mean, some episodics are shot more traditionally.
Yeah.
Dramas, I would say, but the comedies, that's why you gotta mic everyone and hope you can get what you can on a boom.
Yeah.
Don't get the boom.
Someone I still highlight my sides with markers. Yeah. Very traditional. And someone came by and they were relatively new, and they asked me, well, why do you do that? And I said, well, this is what I get paid to do. I get paid to document these words. And if you boil it down, that's why you're there, as either every features and television primarily, but there's a lot of communications that you have to sort of supply. But if the words aren't there, if you're not recording them correctly, you will hear from your uppers about why or not you're not doing it. So that needs to be, I think, the focus. The main focus is you're there to record the dialogue, and if you have to do communications, then that's a separate thing, and you can maybe charge extra for it. But really, and that's sort of what I have to tell my team is, this is a close-up now, get it if you possibly can, and we'll listen back to it later. But that really should be the main focus for those in narrative. But I think all across the board, you're just trying to document the communication between talent.
Yeah it's
and you're constantly mixing, even off camera, off screen dialogue that should be in the mix. So you're looking at the monitors, and you're looking at the levels, but you're really looking at the monitors the whole time.
Yeah, for me, I find that my attention is it floats between the monitors to scriptation on my iPad, and so I can page through it with my little foot pedal thing. It's a trick I learned from Juan Cisneros, but I can page through that. But it's really tough sometimes to have your eyes in the script and then your eyes on the picture. Especially if it's 3 cameras. How many cameras are you shooting with usually, Michelle?
2 to 3.
2 to 3. Yeah. Most shows are 2, I think, and SWAT, when I do B units there, it's still 3 cameras.
Blows my mind.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of, Juan Cisneros just joined the waiting room. Hey. It happens that way. I mean, and on SWAT, they've had times where they have 2 steady cam shots going at the same time with 2 people talking in a room, and those are usually okay to cover because they're laved and the boom can float with whatever, one of the cameras. But
Michelle, how many video monitors do you have on your cart?
3 always.
3.
Even
Wow.
if a 2-camera show, they're always going to bring in a 3rd, and then if you have effects or stunts.
Do you still have that green cart that I saw?
It's been repowder coated blue.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
The Gene Martin cart.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No.
Nice. Yeah, I ended up going with this monitor here. I opted to just have one bigger monitor, and then I get a quad split image sent to it.
I got away with one little 7-inch monitor for most of my career. I ended up getting another monitor that had 2 inputs, so I could look at the B camera, the rare times when they would shoot the B camera. But such a different world.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. For sure. Paul Graff on docs. How often are you using a monitor on set at all in certain situations, or?
In a documentary, no. I mean, I have that kind of setup, and I have a quad split and monitors and stuff like that. But I don't, I rarely use that kind of stuff anymore. So, I mean, on docs, it's pretty simple, pretty lean and mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I think I can only remember one sit down interview where I put the monitor in the car, and then I was glad that I did, because they came up with the most insane lighting setup. They put us in a living room and then just completely put it negative fill on one side. They put a huge source on the other side and then a flag on top. And I was like, I couldn't even see, the talent from where I was. So I wiggled my boom in there on the stand, put it in the right spot. But then I was glad I brought my monitor so I could just see the talent, if they were leaning or what they were doing, because I didn't have eyes on them at all. So that was, I think, one time out of 20 years that I've had to do it.
I feel like other people have a lot. I mean, my world is simple, which is, or not simple. There's a lot of, like what Danny talked about, there's a lot of problem solving, and you're in the middle. You always have, there's you always have to have a lot of redundancy. I always make sure I bring my mixed pre-along. I mean, like a second, backups of everything. And
sure.
So, I mean, a doc can be as simple as interviews to wiring 6 people. I mean, I've done farming docs, and when I did the Shepherd Ferry doc, we wired all 5 guys up while they painted murals in Paris and different things. So you will do, it can be more technical, but it's, really it's just about that there's no looping, there's no second chance, and you get a lot of, so I think, when we talk about hierarchy, I mean, if the director's green and they want to do the interview where there's something noisy kind of out of shot, it's all about being diplomatic and coming at from the point of view of how they're going to use it in post. So they kind of come to their own realization that oh, if that sound's not motivated, you're right, I'm going to want to use this interview. God, it's beautiful here, but the way I want to use this, you're right, we should be in a quiet place. And I mean, on this BBC Changing World, I mean, the DP would come to me. We'd come in and he said, Paul, where do you think we should do the interview? I mean, how often does that happen?
Nice.
Because he's, he knows that the sound, for that interview, that's going to be the audio bed for a lot of things. And a lot, especially if it's archive. I mean, they're going to be cutting that's kind of the, so I would say.
Yeah, because for the most part, they're going to set up a nice frame looking at this person talking, but they're going to watch that frame for the first 10 seconds of the edit, then they'll go to B unit or go to B-roll, and
that's the other thing that you briefly mentioned, Paul, was just the importance that the soundtrack has for documentaries versus even on a feature film or something. That often it's really the soundtrack that's carrying the whole project. You got nice pictures to go along with it, so who's talking, but a good director knows that they have to rely on the sound to tell the story.
And I'll see like one or two other things. I mean, because like I really enjoyed what Danny was talking about. I mean, you have to like tailor your approach to the nature of what you're working on. Sometimes, I mean, you be as precious as you can get away with. And then if it's just a crazy, you know, but at the end of the day, I mean, when the train rolls out of the station, man, you just put your boom out there and get, I mean, you just got to get it. Like a lot of times, you know, we run in, we have a plan, like, oh, we're going to wire. Oh shit, it's happening. Oh, okay, it's happening. Like you got to just get it and not be like, no, you know, and then there's like, you know, things to always, you know, there's red flags like oh, we'll just start booming when we show up and then we'll stop down and wire them. No. Like, like just making sure that like, because wiring, the other thing is in documentaries, it's like so much of what makes a good documentary is like the person being at ease. Like they're all nervous, people show up and like, you're just cool with them, you chat with them, they mellow out. And then like that translates to what's on screen. And also when people are wired and you wire them so that they're wired for like 6 hours, no matter what they do, and you don't have to tweak it, they forget they're wired. Whereas like there's a boom over their head, they get self-conscious. Like, so a lot of times you really want to be, you know, out of the eye line around, like for an interview, be out of the eye line, be out of the, you know, because they're telling an emotional story about when their like sister was killed or when, you know, who knows what they're talking about. So it's like, I think you know, so from that point of view, like, I think in documentary, the directors, they really appreciate that, like kind of the personality, who you are on set is a big part of why you're hired, because that's what's going to translate to screen, as opposed to like somebody shows up who's like rubs somebody the wrong way or is like, look, you know, and then they just don't get the material they want because people get nervous. So
right,
I mean,
right.
So that's kind of my piece about that, because it is, I mean, it's just a lot less, oftentimes much less technical than what we're talking about. But
it really is more about humans, you know,
what separates
making people comfortable and allowing them to speak.
But what separates the professional docs, and this is true of indie movies too, like, I mean, how many is like the sound, you know? I mean, oftentimes what makes it, you know, separates kind of the, you know, the ones that make a difference, or not make a difference, but you really notice it, because so many have bad sound because they just can't afford to. I'll climb off my soapbox now, but this is a fascinating discussion.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm seeing what Canary posted in the chat. The best compliment for me is as a utility is when she goes to collect the wires and the town says they forgot they were wearing one. Yeah, it's perfect. It's awesome.
Nice.
That's very cool. I want to move over to Gene. Gene Martin.
Yeah, let's hear from Gene.
Works in commercials. It's funny because I remember Gene was doing a stretch of commercials. I think they were for Chevy.
Of course.
It was a lot of,
those were amazing.
There's car commercials, but then these were more like having real people and capturing real reactions. It had a reality kind of flair to it, but still, I would imagine with all of the hierarchy of a commercial shoot, which is, you know, if you could, Gene, walk us through that hierarchy of a commercial shoot when you're there. What's your flow of information like in the hierarchy you have to deal with in the commercial world?
So for me, it's always just depending on, you know, who I know. Obviously most of my jobs I'm brought in by, you know, usually director. You know, once I get on their good side, I'm on their must hire list.
Nice. Creative.
But after that, it's, you know, producers, production managers. And as far as, you know, find out what we're doing, I'd say there's probably like 3 good ADs in the commercial world, maybe 2. And I know certain jobs I get on them, I actually get a call the day before. And I'm just like, oh, cool, thank you. And even if it's the most basic, I know if I'm working this one AD, he's going to call me no matter if it's, you know, person standing on stage, green screen, whatever, I'll still get a call. But there's been numerous times where we show up, you know, in commercials, find out usually nothing except where to be at 9 o'clock the night before. And I'll show up and like, oh, so we have a process trailer. Cool. And just, you know, random stuff like that. So it's just trying to, you know, I pride, you know, production coordinators, managers, you know, before the job to get any type of information scripts boards, and most of the time commercials are pretty straightforward, but I seem to usually get ones that are, not, which is fine. I actually enjoy that. And yeah, like, my Chevy commercials I did for years, which Michelle had done some of those with me back in the day. It's basically, it's a reality show, which was, a good run of people. And even on those, it was, trying to figure out, those are one of the good ADs that I actually mentioned. But even on like stuff like that, it's more or less, it's just knowing the personalities on set of who the people are. Because if I know the DP, I'll go ask the DP, or, just depend on how they come across. But there's also DPs that I'll punch in the face before I talk to them. From Chevy also. We did that campaign for 5 years, over 100+ commercials. But yeah, so it's really just, knowing, for me, like how serious the type of job is, who our, clientele is, and the director. Like I said, a lot of the directors, I have that relationship where I'll just go talk to them directly. But if it's something a little bit more intimate, more serious, because we've done some that are pretty much documentaries also, where, anti-text and driving, where they're very serious, kind of like Paul was saying, like there's, you don't kind of just, you just step back and you stay back and you don't, interrupt with stupid things, then but if you need information, you can just kind of lightly ask every people. So it's just more or less, it varies on the job and who I'm working with to, make no sense at all. But yeah, and then but a lot of them are, just being prepared for everything, because we don't always get all of the information.
Is the presence of like the client and agency village still a big thing on commercial sets?
We've gotten back to that. There, for obviously for COVID reasons, for a while it was just like, they're just broadcasting everything, and we'd maybe get a couple people on set, but it's gotten to where everyone's pretty much back on set, and they're doing the Zoom as well, but usually, talk to the VTR guy and there's like nobody even watching type thing. But yeah, and those can vary from 12 to, I think my record's 56 people.
Do you run a whole separate IFB feed for them that's different from the director? And
I used to just have one system, and then just add as needed. But I now have, as far as, I've always had like a dedicated boom setup as well, for private line. But so I have basically 2 systems now. And I've gotten up to 3, just because commercial world is like very different from features and television, where obviously, usually bring the laws down, but, you get on certain movies and TV and they like just the mics up, that's how they communicate. And it's like in commercial world, it's like, oh, you're fired for doing that.
So you don't even want to leave an ambient open source going to the client village ever.
Not a dang thing.
Yeah, so you shut
that's dead, gone. But so having those needs for different systems, I'll have a system for a director. So his is always open, because, like the Chevy stuff, he actually listened to our main actor, pre-fader, and the actors on Earwig. So they had conversations all day long.
Right.
And then everything else, the director was all post-fader stuff. But then I also had a third system, for, which seems to be a big thing, I think, obviously in features and television as well, is for the camera crew.
Mm-hmm.
To where, again, and on that, I would assume you could have them as same system as context and all that on features and television. But in commercial world, I still need to be able to have the possibility to have context killed, but production, production people listen, when we're rehearsing and all that and everything. But
right.
So usually it's up to 3 systems, well, 4 including my boom.
Okay, so boom is on a whole
whole separate system.
Okay,
so I used to like share that, occasionally back, with director, if the director need to be private, and then I just tell my boom mom, don't say stupid shit. If you need to talk to me PL, and I'll bring it down and listen.
Yeah, you have a safe word.
Exactly.
Mechanical approach to the flow of information.
Exactly. But it's
keep your mouth shut.
So it's just more or less just being ready for everything, and just me just prodding production before anything, just to kind of make sure I know everything that's going on. Because on the day, like, you know, I said, depending on the AD, they just expect you to figure it out. You know, it's
follow the trail and
their minds.
So when
because I have other ADs too. Like one of them's a good buddy of mine, but I give him shit because he's kind of like a jackass when it comes to being an AD. Because like we'll be doing a commercial and he's like, I need my 10 people, and I'm like, what script are you reading? I have 2 people talking.
Yeah,
and it's just like, well, we have the extras just in case. I'm like, first off, if production will pay for it, sure, I'll mic everybody. You know, I don't care. You know, more money. That's the way you kind of have to look at it.
I'll mic anybody that comes in off the street, right?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, that's, you know, how a lot of it goes. When the Chevy commercial stuff, we did mic everybody. But that's, you know, how that had to be done.
Yeah. Sometimes people believe that since, you know, you might only be shooting one person at a time, but since, you know, you're going to interview 10 different people, you need 10 different mics. It's like, no, it's not
or,
really
you know, and that one, you know, I had one situation recently that I'm like, well, what are these 10 people doing? It's like, oh, they're walking up in a line and all saying something. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just boom that. If they're all just talking one at a time and they're all just landing in the same spot, you know, but anyway, so a lot of times they just don't think, you know, they just tell you what they think is best. But, you know, you just kind of, and again, diplomatically, you know, either disagree or just tell them like, no, we can do this, but.
Or you just turn into an advisor at that point. You just have to advise them. It's like, you know, because some people just think line means laugh. And no, line doesn't necessarily mean laugh. Like,
which in a lot of cases, I mean, that's, I think like everything nowadays as well, if they actually do have a line, we do mic them regardless, just for safety's sake. You know, commercials are always 2 cameras now. Anyways, it seems like so there is always, you know, a wide aspect that is much wider while we're doing a close-up tight shot. So
Gene, do you ever use a production walkie to get information?
I don't. I have avoided them as much as possible. But there are certain jobs where I've gotten to where they're like, hey, you just need to have that, not have it patched into like a return. But I don't really have my, you know, boom op, or, you know, that's usually all I get nowadays, occasionally, you know, a third. But yeah, just most of the time they'll just run over to me, or I always try to be, you know, within earshot of, you know, pretty much everyone during shooting anyways, but on occasion, but I do try to avoid it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you real quick, Michelle, just a sideline. Are you using anything comm-wise to communicate with your crew back and forth other than them talking through the booms when you're not rolling?
Yeah, I actually use these like cheap walkies that are pretty much just a mic. So
cool.
It's a private line walkie, and then it feeds back to them through their WYSICOM IFBs. So they don't have to use a separate. Not even. It's just going in through my Kantar, and then that's.
But I mean, for your people to listen.
Oh no! Sometimes I use a walkie and just have it low.
Oh, okay.
You know, on the follow cart, but
yeah,
I've thought about implementing that.
Yeah, I really only ask is the communication for, like, you know, on set, not so much obviously while rolling, but yeah, I've actually, you know, purchased some of the smaller Motorola walkies just for that communication, just because they have the, you know, additional range, whatever is needed.
Exactly, yeah.
They're inexpensive.
Yeah, utility can be out, you know, outside the stage. And like, okay, what do you guys want from Crafty?
Yeah, so, the important things. Things.
What's my food?
Diet Coke.
You know, in all the years of working with Don Coufal, I don't think we ever had anything to say to each other. And
I know Don gave a lot of looks. You could just read his face.
Yeah. But I know that Don used to tell me some stories. He'd be working for some other sound mixers that had a whole communication system, and they'd be like constantly talking to him. It just drove him crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and but I guess each team figures out, you know, Mark Yolano is famous for having like major academic conversations with his crew while they're shooting. You know,
I can attest to some of those from my internship. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, but it was just nothing I ever felt the need to do. And
yeah, it has its uses, you know, occasionally.
So I really only had one system, you know, generally just a Comtech system, which I would give to a script and director and all. And then we did get something a little bit better the couple of times when we had to do wireless boom work, which we weren't doing at all, believe it or not. Don was always on a hardwired duplex cable. It's just a different world that I was in, and it was a long time ago.
Well, my first movie that I ever boomed was called The Mannsfield 12, and it was about a 12-member prison gang, and then you had the warden and the assistant warden and the head of the guards, and then like the 3 henchmen guards. You had like 20 some odd people in the cast, and I remember the mixer on that was Brandon Barnes, and he works in IT now. And but yeah, that we did that with a 744T with a single hardline, boom, that whole entire movie.
Well, you would be amazed, Chris. I've had people come to me and ask me about scenes and movies that I've done, and they wanted to know how many wires and how did I do this. I said that was one mic on Don's fishpole. I said, no, not possible. But the point is, that's also because they have no idea how films used to be shot.
Right. And the only saving grace on Mannsfield 12 was our director, Craig Ross. He was an episodic TV director, but he was also an editor. He understood his sound coverage. He knew how to separate shots that were geographic in nature and shots that were actor performance. And so he shot his performances. Of course. We shot with 2 cameras the whole time, but he had no problems with just saying, okay, we're done with the wide. We're coming in. And
my main director in the beginning, Hal Ashby, was a an Academy Award winning editor for 20 years before he started directing. Yeah. And so he would he'd be I'd visit him in the editing room, and he would put a scene together sometimes without even looking at the picture, only listening to the dialogue. And then he'd find the picture that goes along with that dialogue, because he knew that a lot of the performance was not in the image. It was in how people sounded, how they were relating to themselves,
Yeah, one of the main things I learned from Mark on my internship with him, Mark Ulano, was that sound and dialogue is the emotional connection to the character, and you can that is the big window into the emotion.
Can you find anybody today that even wants to talk about that concept?
I'm lucky that I work with a few directors that understand that. They understand pace, tone, the rhythm of a scene, the rhythm of dialogue, and that's how they cut. But I love when I run into those directors. Those are the ones I really love working with. And
I had that with Cameron Crowe, who ended up relying on me and Don, more than he would rely on his DP or anything for not just, he knew we were going to record good sound. I mean, that was sort of a given. But for all sorts of other things, for performance, pacing, whether we're telling the story, all that sort of stuff. It was, it was great.
Hey, Adam, jump in there.
Yeah. Hey, I was going to say, I just want to add some color to Gene's comments on the commercial world, since that's kind of my primary world nowadays. And I thought just a lot of things he was saying were spot on. Logistics wise, it's logistics, because they don't tell you anything, and you can be emailing them at 9 p.m. going, hey, I haven't seen any of the creative for this spot we're going to do tomorrow morning. And they'll go, oh yeah, we'll get that to you soon. And you're
it's
going,
not ready.
So you just have to show up cold, right? I mean,
you have to have everything. You have to be like on your game. You have to be like a samurai in there jumping in.
Wow.
And I'll just give an example. So I did this year's Nissan campaign. They call it Heisman House. It's all the college football Heisman Trophy winners in this mansion. They do them every year. There's about 10, 15 spots they cut out of it. They film it in Pasadena. So every other department, I think, there were 300 people on the call sheet. Every other department got to come out and do a scout and get a setup day, but not sound, not VTR, or no, even VTR was there, even DIT was there, but not sound. And so they go, call is 7 a.m. at base camp. You can't get into the neighborhood until 7:30. So at 7:30, we're trying to drive onto the estate to unload the van, and we're pulling the carts out, and we're going, where, what are we doing? Where are we going? Who do we have to feed? There's a village out the back of the estate, with 20 client. There's in the front yard is director village.
And they probably want to be shooting right now, right?
Someone's in the house. So I'm just rolling my card in. I've got boom and utility. And I would say, so if we're unloading the van at 7:30, by 7:50, there's a second coming up to us going, hey, we've got 6 actors we want a mic. And, I'm going, where's hey, I'm going to try and, plug into something here. And by 8:15, 8:30, we were rolling the first shot, and it's absolute madness. And this is so common in the commercial world.
We get the same call time as the script supervisor.
It's obscene. And I don't know. I don't know if it's just because they have tons of money, but so I don't understand why they do it like that. But I think it's a disconnect with how they think sound department works.
They do it because they do it because they can.
One of the observations I've had about it, this reminds me of trying to come up with prep days, or trying to come up, trying to get invited onto the Tech Scout. It's one of those things, like if production has questions for you, they will lasso you in and make you part of that process. If they don't have questions for you, they're not considering the questions you as a department head might have for them. They're not considering that. They're like, oh, you can figure it out on your own. We don't need to know anything from you. The list of those people invited on the Tech Scout and who have prep days, that's because production has questions for them. Production needs, they feel like, they want them to work this out. So then I have to call them, and I'm the one that's like, okay, so I start asking questions, and the more questions I ask, they're like, maybe we should just have you on the Tech Scout. I'm like,
yeah.
Yay, that would be great. Which is, if I were to just say, hey, can I go on the Tech Scout? They'd be like, oh, why do we need you? We don't need you on the Tech Scout. Yeah, I need to be on the Tech Scout for you. Trust me, you need me there. You don't know it yet, but you do.
Yeah, and like on this campaign, there were 6 different units working. I mean, some of them were social, some were ESPN. There's an A and a B main unit, and we had plans to RF coordinate and everything. By the time, literally, we're landing there, and they're saying, can we wire this talent? And I'm going, let's see what the frequencies landed off the truck. When I power up my cart, let's see what let's see what it looks like from the last job I was on. And like, oh yeah, throw this one out there on Tim Tebow, because they're about to pull. There's a technocrane in the front yard with a shot lined up, and they don't want to wait. So for me on commercials, big commercials, the bigger it is, the more money they have, the less organized it is. And you just need to be able to feed things in all directions. The coverage is the easiest part. That's by far the easiest part. It's getting the feeds to all the places and being on time. That's really hard. And then speaking of comms, I do find that important as well, to have multiple comm options, because there's VIP directors who, this guy likes good ears, this woman likes good ears, And so, for instance, I have Comtex for public. I've got a couple different Comtech channels on my cart, and then so I use the BST 75s in that because I can match them with my bag. And then I do use the Electro Duet system for my team's private line. And the thing I like about that is it's a couple stereo transmitters, and you can put whatever you want in that matrix. It's all Dante. And so if it needs to be, an in-ear stereo feed, if it needs to be just a mono, if your team wants to hear the boom, if your team wants to just, hear the mix, you can just dial that up from the cart. So I think it's important in commercial work that you have options. You can't just have one public feed, because some people might need to be able to hear things.
Yeah.
And Chris, Ferris has his hand up.
Yeah, Ferris.
I was just since we're talking commercial, that's kind of the market here in Dallas. So one thing that I noticed as I start to do more of it is on some of the lower budget commercials, still kind of a big name, but not, as big as that. Oftentimes when I do get a creative or when I'm in talks, they'll say, oh, there's no scripted dialogue. So you don't need a boom up. You don't need this. You don't need that. Kind of fighting against that. If you guys have thoughts or, opinions on, well, no, just because there's not scripted, because then on the day when you get there, it's like, oh, we're going to have the actors improv all these lines, and like, they end up using them. And then you're kind of stuck in this position of,
yeah,
this should absolutely be, you should always have at least a 2-man team. And
yeah, Gene or Adam. Yeah, Gene or Adam, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, Gene, go ahead.
Adam. Yep.
Well, you go, and then I'll go.
All right. My rule of thumb is just usually, if they say there's any dialogue, I can ask like, okay, well, what's dialogue? Because it does happen. I mean, and if I know the client or the, whoever's hiring me, they'll be like, no, there's literally, they're saying one word. And I've been on commercials where someone said the word what. And so that, I'm like, yeah, fine. And, I know they're not going to kind of BS me, but I also, if it's someone I don't know and they say, oh yeah, I'm like, all right, well, how many contacts? 15 contacts. And I'm like, let's get another person. Cause especially if we have a move, I'm not going to rely on anybody else. It's more than just having the boom out on set, but also like my main kind of like, not so snarky, because I'm very political when it comes to being on set, because like those are the people that hire you. I'm very like against like, all these sound mixers, throw them out and all this other BS of like, tell this producer this, or do you need to tell the production manager that? And like, I'm very much like, no, those are the people that are hiring you. Those are people you make happy. So be political about it. But, one of my things in regard to like, whenever they want to do something like that, where they're like, oh no, there's a little bit of dialogue, blah, 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 is just like, is there a second AC? Like if there's a second AC, then there should be a boom up, because that just tells you the speed things are going to be moving at. So that's usually kind of like my kind of like gentle argument. But yeah, in commercial world, as of right now, that's not required for our union.
Yeah. The other answer, depending on if it's a union job, certainly in LA, it's pretty much settled in now that'll be a two-person crew.
Right. My problem is I'm in Texas, so it's a right to work. So
exactly.
A lot of these
they can do whatever they want, right?
They should be union, but they're not, and it's that whole.
And so you have to fight that battle. You know.
And there was a whole. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember having this conversation with Chris. I remember you and I having this conversation on a job once when I was kind of coming up, and I was saying, "Hey, man, I'm getting this higher profile work, but they always just want to hire. They sometimes just want to hire me, and they will not budget for personnel. And I always end up feeling like a joker out there wearing my bag and booming, and there's 7 cameras and 400 people, and I'm like putting my bag on an Apple box. And you were just saying, Chris, your advice to me, which I took to heart and it worked, is you need to make it about speed for them. So you need to say, listen, guys, I don't want to slow you down when we get out there, and I won't be able to react to all the things that are happening. I won't be able to move the gear, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to just say to them, basically, like my thing is there dialogue? What is the dialogue? Like Gene said, if it's one word, and he's like, they're going to be standing there, they're stationary, it's one word, you put a boom on a stand, that's the whole thing. And you trust them, okay, maybe that's one thing. If there's any movement, any dialogue, you say, look, it takes 2 hands to boom, it takes 2 hands to mix, and I can't do either of those to a professional standard if I'm trying to do both at the same time. And I won't be able to keep up with what size is your camera department? Oh, it's 9 people. Yeah, we need a boom op. We need 1 assistant. How many contacts, like Gene said? Oh, there's 20. Yeah, we need a boom operator, because there's no way we can move. I can physically do all those things. So I would just say, try to pitch it that way. And then about the client, like Gene said, in the commercial world, it is all about client relations, and they're the people who hire you and pay you a lot of money. And so some of the best compliments I can get as a mixer in commercial, now, like you said, it's a different discipline in narrative, episodic, et cetera, documentary, small crew. But in commercial, well, Chris, you had me cover a job for you, big PlayStation commercial last year. And at the end of the shoot, the director came up to me and he said, "Hey, man, it was so great working with you. I didn't have to come back and talk to you about anything all day." And that was a great compliment in the commercial world, and it was a great spot.
Nice. It's probably why I haven't heard from them again.
I haven't either. So yeah,
it's totally fine.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. It's it's strange. When going back to the dialogue question, when they say there's no scripted dialogue, it's like, all right, so I'm covering reactions. And for me, usually my first go-to is, I wouldn't consider that no dialogue. I'm covering a reaction, which honestly is 1,000 times more delicate than a line. Because now they may speak, they may not speak, but we have to again, going back to what Mark Ulano put in my head, sound is the emotional connection to the character. So, in some cases, shooting, covering from the sound standpoint, a reaction is even more delicate than it is a line. So, that could be a sigh. It could be somebody, choking a little bit. Oh, really? Like, it could be any of those little auditory things, but those often are, and I'll tell them that these are often more delicate than regular dialogue. Like I can cover, somebody with a newscaster type voice, speaking and owning the room, but a human, innate human reaction is going to be much more delicate thing to cover. And I just went through that on a commercial. I just did this PGA Superstore commercial, and we had 2 days of shooting. And the first day was very heavy. The second day was just one location. And there was only a few lines. And the producer that was hiring me, I just worked with him on a movie last year. And he just said, oh yeah, the second day I was just going to have you on by yourself. And I'm like, why? And they're, oh, well, there's only a few lines. I'm like, okay, there might only be a few lines, but so does this mean you're not going to have a client village, or you're not going to have director village? Are we shooting it differently? Are we shooting it? And I asked, are we shooting it in an ENG style? Meaning like, is it going to be handheld with the DP operating? And this is, if it's one of those things where we're just kind of landing and it's going to look quick, then yeah, I'll do that. But if you're taking the same camera apparatus, the same 2 cameras, the G&E truck, and you're still going to have client village, and you're still going to have the regular director village, like it doesn't matter how many lines there are, all those people are still going to want to hear the lines. So I need, it's not about the amount of lines ever. It's about the setup. So in order to maintain the setup from the first day to the second day, I'm still going to need 2 people. And luckily he was okay with that. We worked it out. But yeah, there was this thing in their head where it was like, oh, just because there's only 2 lines, you could do it by yourself. It's like, no, because your setup's the same. We don't crew for this. We don't crew for the number of lines. We crew for the setup we have to support. And that one, luckily I had his ear, and we made it work. So, but anyway, well, cool. What's coming up on noon? And if I want to just take this time for any last minute questions from anybody. I mean, we started with around 60 people, and we still have around 60 people now, which is great. And I'm so glad that everybody's been able to make it. But if you have any questions for any one of the panelists for the next few minutes or so, we'll just let it fly, and use the raise hand icon. And I want to thank all the panelists for being here. It's been so great to have you and your perspective. I really dig it. So first question.
I admit I avoid these things, but I've really enjoyed it so much. I'm just
good.
Well, I was with all this stuff I have to get done before.
I'm so glad to have you aboard.
Very pleased to see you, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been kind of hiding under a rock, so it's been really fun.
Yeah.
We'll pull you out from under that rock. Don't worry.
For decades you have, Paul. For decades.
Yeah, whenever he shows up to one of our live events, our mixers or something, I'm like, it's Paul, he's here.
Hey, Paul, cool. Do you remember our luncheon at Broadway Deli?
At the late Broadway Deli, I know.
That's right.
It's really, that was so cool of you.
A few years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go to.
Anyway.
Sorry, let's go to Sage.
Hey, all. I kind of got a continuation of what we were just talking about, but more focused on feature, which I didn't get to talk about as much. Since moving down to LA, I found it very hard to get like 3-person teams on features of all size. I do mostly tier 1 or tier 2, and I wasn't really expecting the pushback that I was getting. I'm curious how you advocate to get yourself 3-person teams, even when some days are light. Feel like I've made a lot of really good arguments that get ignored by producers. So
I think even on the tier movies, it's still a 3-person crew required in LA, union wise. And if they want to go with less, they have to file a waiver and be granted a waiver.
Yeah. Are these union productions or non-union, Sage?
I'm talking about union productions. Like I expect to have that fight with non-union, but I've managed to get like utilities for usually like half the shooters, sometimes 3/4. But I did a tier 1, which probably is going to go over budget, to a tier 2 with like actual A-list talents, and I still had pushback, even though having a 3-person team the whole movie is going.
I may not be right on this because I've never done a tier movie, but Chris, you've done.
I've done tier movies. I know there's certain contracts out there that do not require a 3rd.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember which ones they are.
Oh boy.
But there are some. Usually, if it's something shooting under the basic, they have to apply for a waiver from the local, and the local has to grant it. But there are some contracts out there. I don't know which ones, but they don't require a third. It's just I don't want to get too much into union contracts and union discussion here.
All right,
because that's something they should be talking about. But I do know when advocating for a third, I know on some indie projects I've tried and failed. But then I always keep them aware of what the limitations are. Usually my first go-to when I'm having that conversation is, look, as soon as the boom operator leaves the set to do something, or as soon as I have to get up out of my chair to do something, you've lost the ability to shoot. The whole production is now dead in its tracks if we're not sitting in our spot ready to go. And when you're shooting, I always make the distinction between E&G camera shooting styles and studio camera shooting styles. E&G camera shooting styles are more like docs, news gathering, where the DP is operating the camera and you can follow them around, and then it just happens. It's very OTF, on the fly feel, and that's one way. That's a style of shooting. And sometimes you can work as a sound mixer. You can work in more of an E&G nature with one or two people in that kind of environment. But as soon as camera is now shooting studio style with a DP, sipping coffee at Village, talking to their operators who also have a separate focus puller and a separate second AC, and then you have a digital loader and
cameras and a nine-person camera team.
That information flows completely differently, and they're rehearsing their shots and reimagining their shots as it gets lit, as they see the blocking, and the boom operator has to be a direct witness to that. And that's why I would never do that E&G anymore. I did it back in the day, and because I didn't know the questions to ask, and I got peeled. But that was the thing, is you need to have that boom operator on set to manage that process, to know what it is, and to interact with it, seamlessly. But then you also need to be in your chair as the mixer. For me, I have my head in the script. I'm watching the frames come up, but if the two of us are if my boom operator has to leave to go put a lav on somebody, or if I have to do that, the progress stops, and it's not good for the coverage. It's not good for the actor's comfort. It's so I mean, that's usually my first go-to point with that.
I will jump in real quick, just as like my argument usually on anything like that, and even commercials or whatever it may be, is just, if there's, depending, like, you bring up the amount of cast, whatever, and just be like, look, if we hold you up 15 minutes, not because of our lack of capability, but just because of our lack of power, personnel power to do something, how much does 15 minutes of overtime cost you? So I guarantee it's a lot more than the salary of the boom op.
True.
So, and so that's usually like, again, you're not trying to school them. You're just trying to make a good argument. Where you're like, obviously we'll do the best we can do, but as long as you're honest with them and not just we have to have it just because whatever, you have to, make your reasons justified. The other aspect to that, which there have been people that I have refused to hire back, on any of my jobs, is if you do get those third people, make sure they're not on their damn phone if you fought to get them there in between the things of not doing anything, because that's what people will see when they're even if they're doing the middle of a take, whatever, if that utility is just sitting there just kind of like browsing on their phone, and they just see that as being like not productive. So they'd be like, well, what am I paying for? Obviously, even though, yes, maybe there's nothing they can do during that aspect, but I think that is a big thing, especially when you're having to fight for those positions. Just bring that up to, your people, be like, hey, just make sure you're not on your phone all the time. If you notice it, bring it up.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, it kind of sucks too, because the utility might be doing that, but there'll be 5 grips who the cameras are rolling and everything's going. There'll be 5 grips sitting there on their phones doing that because they're crewed up for the setting up of it, not for the shooting of it, and but you're right. They'll look at the utility and be like, they'll see that one person on their phone and call that out. It's a little frustrating.
I was going to ask Gene, what's your criteria for asking for a third on commercial work? Because for me, it's either there's an obvious 2 boom situation where just the script says this has got to be a 2 boom thing, and so I need another person, or there's a remote base camp situation, like, hey, we really want to wire everyone here and bring them in. Okay, yeah, we need a third. Or it's just an especially large, fast-moving thing. That's usually my cases. What about you?
Yeah, the main one is celebrity talent. So if there's any celebrity talent, you know, I'd be like, look, I want to have, you know, a dedicated person for that person. Or yeah, certain stage aspects where, you know, they're so far apart. Yeah, obviously the basics, but the other one, just big thing commercial wise, is how many agency we're dealing with, because, you know, once I'm over 20 contacts, like that's a lot of BS to deal with.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a one move, you know, they don't move shit. And you know, PA is just going to bring you like the most tangled rat nest of headphones and contacts.
Yeah, they get up and move, but they don't take anything with them, right?
Yeah, no, if they do, it's in their car too, and they're like, I don't know where it's at. But yeah, it's usually the amount of, you know, agency besides the other aspects that you brought up.
Cool. Okay, let's if we can, let's go to Devin.
Hey, this is a question for Paul. I guess I just want to compare notes because Doc's my world. I want to know sort of how often you're wearing different hats. Like 80% of the time I end up as a stand-in once I'm done my setup, or I'm picking up gear, dropping gear off, anything, because it's, for me, it's that kind of set. But I'm just curious to know what your experience is with that sort of thing.
Well, I will say I always offer to sit in because usually I can set up a lot. Oh, sorry, my son-in-law is calling me. Oh, I'll call him back. So
yeah, sitting in. So when you're sitting in.
Yeah, I mean, I always offer to sit in. I mean, it's definitely a much more all hands on deck world, that's for sure. And you know, I'm always happy to, you know, if it's in the non-union world in general. I mean, I guess, yeah, I think if you,
I'll say that when it comes to collaborating, I don't mind helping, like carry in a few camera cases or carrying in a C-stand if I feel like I can do it safely. And yeah, sometimes when it comes to just sitting in, like, yeah, if I have my gear set up and I see them lining up a shot, I'll just sit there, and they may not even ask me to, but sometimes I'll just sit and.
Well, right, yeah. The newbie thing to do is to go in there and put your like boom up really right away. It's like, no, like just this is all going to change. It's kind of even when you were a boom operator on set, you just watch and then find your spot like at the end or something.
Yeah, I guess it's more a question about sort of crew dynamics, and Chris alluded to, you know, I'm always helping people, you know, load in if I have a spare hand, and it's the biggest adjustment that I find when I work on sort of more commercial or dramatic sets is, you know, there's the union, you don't touch anyone other stuff, absolutely. And I find it a big adjustment compared to Doc. So I'm just wondering.
It is true. I mean, I think that's what a lot of today's discussion I would expect is just boundary, you know, like how these boundaries, whether they're like, you know, the physical boundaries or what I talked about before, where like you'd be going out to dinner with the director and stuff, you know, how those are different depending on, like, you know, when there's something where there's 300 people on the call sheet versus something where there's 5 people on the call sheet. And but you also really have to set boundaries too. You have to set boundaries in terms of like eating or a 10-hour rate. I always quote like a straight rate on documentaries because my idea is like, well, lunch is kind of always on the clock because, you know, you have to just definitely be, I mean, I work with people who really treat me right. And so, but you have to just kind of go with the flow on that. And I don't know what else you're talking, like, you know, in terms of, I mean, that's how I rationalize, especially when I lived down in Santa Monica, buying lots of gear. It's like, well, if I'm going to use it, driving to the valley, picking something up, driving to the valley, dropping something off, I might as well just own it so that I don't have to look.
Nice.
But anyway, does that answer your question? I mean,
like I say, I'm just wanting to compare notes and see what other people's experience on Doc are, because I work alone 90% of the time.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's the case of it for sure.
I think in a small,
you have to tailor that to the nature of, you know, it's just like, it's always about reading the room, reading the situation, figuring out kind of what's appropriate for this production versus that. So
nice.
Yeah, in a small crew situation like this, I've done a lot of Doc too. you you're a unit, and oftentimes you're on the road together, and so you do want to pitch in, because to me, I think those kind of gigs, you get those because people think to themselves, not just who could do the job, but who would I want to spend 2 weeks with on the road, going to restaurants with at night, sitting around, riding in vans for 3 hours at a time in between spots. And so, yeah, it's really good to, as Paul said, you want to set your boundaries, because you don't want to become an assistant camera and also the gaffer of the shoot, and also the drone operator, because they are trying to do that thing. But you do want to be helpful, sit in and carry a case, and that is the thing that will get you repeat work with those people. Oftentimes it's a producer, director, or DP who will get your name in there. They'll champion you. You want to have people champion you, and you need to read the room as to any situation. Why would those people want to champion you? And in a commercial or a feature, it's different than in a doc.
I think that's even more true with camera department, where when they're trying to, like, if you can be like the second camera operator who's also a drone operator who also does underwater or something, like those guys work a lot. But sound, I mean, I think it's more just like sound is job one. But when I can do that, and then I also have like some extra, the interview is a classic example, then yeah, but it's a fine line between pitching in but still remembering what your primary role is there.
Yeah, like my role for like, because early in my career I would just stick around and like help everyone load everything out all the time, because I was new and I was like, I guess I should just do this so everybody thinks I'm a team player. You don't have to do that, but if it's just you and the camera op, or you and the DP, yeah, that's like, I'm not just gonna load up my cart and be like, see you, dude, without being like, hey, can I help you break some stuff down, take it to your car? If you see they need help. Now, if they've got 6 people on their team, I'm like, pack up my cart and leave. And I'm like, thanks, guys, it's been great. So it's just like that.
Nice.
And I'll say one more thing that's like, I think relates to everything, which is that like professionals stand up for themselves. So, I mean, like there's a degree to like, a lot of times when you push back on things in general, I mean, this is a weird example, but I remember I did this HBO doc about Jerry Weintraub, this producer, right? And it was like day one, first day, I was recording on a Zax camera and burning DVD RAMs. And the first shot, which is like in his Beverly Hills home, and they decided to frame in this enormous piece of artwork behind him, so the wire, and he's wearing this like, and so it was the first. But my point was like, is this so I go to wire him, really difficult, and he's an asshole, or he was an asshole to me. He's like, hey, this is a fucking $1,000 Tom Ford shirt, and so I kind of like, I said, listen, I was kind of like, and there was like, there was just all this nuance where I was like, listen, I basically just explained, this has to sound good, but I can't remember, but my point was just that like, he kind of like tested me in a way to see if I was going to like, be like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Weintraub. I was like, no, I'm I have a job to do and I need to do it. And I'm like, there's a lot of nuance there, but like over the whole rest of the doc, that was like a moment for me when I realized he was kind of like, it was a way of like testing me to see if I was going to stand up for myself almost, and I don't know. I mean, I think that lesson can apply to other things, where when you're starting, you feel like, oh, I have to say yes to, oh yeah, I can do all this, I can do this. And it's like, no, I can't do that. That's not going to work. And then that kind of is the mark that I don't know. That's my piece on that.
Nice. Well, cool. Let's see, Naan.
Hey, but back to getting to like the high cast count, and like that guy was saying, oh, it's a 2-person team, or rarely. When I go into negotiations with a production manager or something, first of all, they already know me. I've been working for them for like 20 years plus. They already know that it's a 3-person team, and on high cast counts, I get a 4th. If the budget allows to. That way I can double boom, and or get somebody, just 2 people wiring, or and 3 booms if I have to. It on the last show, I just finished Animal Control season 1. That was a comedy, lots of high cast count, very fast paced. Occasionally I'd bring a 4th person in, but it was already agreed upon because I'd read the script break it down. I'm like, hey, okay, so PM, these are the days that I need the extra hands. Is that fine? He's like, yeah. We budgeted for it. So that's something I try to get done. They don't always go for it, depending on the budget and stuff, but minimum 3 people on IATSE gigs. And if it's a playback, music, if it's difficult, if they want, editing and cutting, I always get a playback operator. And also for tech scouts and stuff like that, if I can't make a tech scout, and this is part of my deal memo too, I hire somebody to go and replace me, to take pictures, notes, whatever, or send one of my crew, and then I'll hire somebody to replace that person out of my crew. It's super important. I'm doing a show right now, a pilot. We're way up near Whistler, and some of the locations I'm just like, how am I going to do? Is this a bag rig? Is this a tow rig? It's very important, and that's an argument that I always say to the PM. I was like, I don't want to hold you guys up, but it'd be worth it to have somebody on the tech survey get me those notes so we can prep for it way in advance, and it's very, very helpful.
Yeah, a lot of it boils down to the logistical information that we need to get in and out of a location safely.
Exactly.
Well, I love to hear that, Dan. That's just
that's cool.
Yeah, and I'm super tired. I just drove back from Whistler a few hours ago from a fraternity.
Oh gosh.
So I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my god.
And you're in Vancouver, right? So you're the same time zone as us. Yeah. So
and hi Devin. Hi. I barely get to see Devin. He's from Vancouver as well.
Yeah, I don't see anyone else. Like I say, I work alone most of the time.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think I saw Kyle earlier. I saw Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle's here too. He just had a baby, so he's his wife had a baby, and anyways, I'm so tired. I gotta go to bed, guys.
Thank you so much.
Very nice seeing you guys.
So
Bye-bye.
Cool. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this up, but I just want to give a big shout out and some love to Sabi Tulak. Sabi is he was the one that came up with the idea during the COVID pandemic to do video chats like this one, and he kind of led it, and Blas Kisich was involved. I was involved. We used to do them every Tuesday. And I think we did 23 chats over a 6-month period. I think 20 of them are on the LA Sound Mixers Facebook page, the public page, and they all have the notes, topics attached to them. You can go watch them all.
Oh, I had no idea that you had those up.
Yeah, because we stream them, and so they're there. There's a couple that are on YouTube, because I think at the time we had trouble streaming on Facebook.
They were so good.
So they're on the YouTube channel, and then we there was one chat that we didn't record, and we did that on purpose. That was the chat that was on negotiations, rates, negotiation tactics.
Right. That's not the stuff you want out in the public.
And it was a good chat, but it was definitely just for us in the room on that day. So it was a good chat to have. It was very constructive. But Sabi really, this LA Sound Mixers video chat is just an extension of Sabi's original idea, and I hope to have him involved as we move forward. We can't do it every week, but we'll try and do it maybe once a month, and then maybe have some special editions as people become available. Maybe some one-on-one interviews, cover some interesting topics, approaches to certain films, that kind of things.
Thank you so much, Chris, for resurrecting this. And the space is getting a little filled up on the weekends. And you're gonna, like CAS has a board meeting the first Saturday of the month, or the second Saturday, and the union board meeting, which you know about, is on the third Saturday usually.
Saturday, right? Yeah.
And
we'll see where things land in the community. We'll try and keep them, somewhat consistent. But and we know a lot of people coming to this, we're really, our topics are going to be catered around people that are coming into the craft on the newer side, to help them get acclimated and oriented, because
that's so valuable. Just like what you had when you make reference, Chris, to like your internship. That's a complete foreign idea for most people. Most people just end up having to jump in and there you are.
I keep this on the wall here in my workshop, and this is my internship picture. That's Mark Yolano, Tom Hardig is boom operator, me. And when we were in New Orleans, we had a local third, Chris Tiffany, who was there. This is Ian Kelly, who was our video assist operator. But yeah, I keep this picture up because this is when I was just learning the process, and I was
I remember when you were fairly early to everything, and I ran into you at the Santa Monica, at third place.
You have no idea how much that little you tapping me on the shoulder that day really
was great.
Was powerful. It was. I
as a community, I think the sound people are a lot more in tune with each other and our sociability and all than camera people don't do this kind of thing. They're too full of themselves.
In my travels in the last couple of years, I've been to Europe twice, and I've been to Paris, London, Istanbul, and chatted with people all over. And that was a common theme over the last year, was that they really missed the COVID chats, because they don't, wherever they are, they may not have as well developed a sound community there. So they kind of adopted us over the pandemic. So this is our way of reaching out. And I just want to encourage everybody, wherever you live, reach out to the other mixers that work in your general area. Find those people you resonate with, and support each other in your local communities, and you'll find that it's a huge help. Sure, every now and then our resumes are going to end up on the same desk. We can't help that, but price the jobs accordingly. Protect the sustainability of the craft in your area, and but reach out and connect with each other, because we want to grow as a community. And that's...
in the old days, this whole idea that you don't talk about stuff with anybody else because you might lose work. I know that some of the really old sound mixers, even older than me, used to talk about, your bag of tricks. Don't let anybody know your bag of tricks, but fortunately, when I got in, it was not, a lot of that had gone away, and now I think it's gone away altogether. There's still a competition, and people still worry about losing work and all, but I think the fact that people are generous with their experiences and interning and mentoring and all, it is terrific.
Yeah, just look at each other as a support system, and and the jobs will fall where they may, but we're here to help each other learn, and that's part of what this video chat is all about. And we look forward to hitting up Berlin and Rome in May to do this live in front of an audience. It'll be fun. We're going to mix some different elements into it, not just the chat, but there's going to be the boom class. I'm reaching out to local mixers there to bring their cart rigs and bag rigs out to walk us through how they.
You're lucky to be able to do all that traveling. All the places you just mentioned, I've actually shot in all of those places. So that's been my connection with the crews, is to actually work with them.
Yeah, that's cool. No,
Can I say something, Chris?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can I say something?
Oh, Andres, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you.
Yeah, just likewise. I just wanted to reinforce what you just said, because we did that here in Mexico with a bunch of friends. We created, I told you about this the other day when we got together.
Yeah.
We created the Sonido Directo Football Club, we call it. And it's just a bunch of mixers that we're all friends, that we just share what we're doing here. It's just like, hey guys, I just got this offer. I'm doing this. I turned down this for such and such reasons. Anybody got a spare MS mic? I need 3 of them on this project. It's just something that didn't happen before. And since the pandemic, since I jumped on here with you guys, which is always, I've been grateful forever for it. But I advise people from other countries to do the same thing, because we've just gotten along so much better. And like you said, there's work for everybody. There's a lot of work in the world. So
nice.
What I teach you is not going to take anything off of my plate. I'm just going to help you get what you need, right? So it's been great here in Mexico since we did that. There's a bunch of friends that were on it, and it's just thanks for the idea, and thanks for these chats, man. I really missed it. So
such a good attitude, such a good approach.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Just wanted to say that. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much. That's really cool. Yeah. So what else can I add? I think that about covers it. I really appreciate everybody coming. If you have ideas for future shows, future topics that we're going to talk about, email me directly at lasoundmixer@gmail.com. Also, if you have any specific questions regarding the topics we talked about, send those to me as well. If I can't answer them, I will try and connect you to the person who can. And yeah, we'll hopefully shed some light on whatever questions you have, but always looking for audience feedback. And I really want to thank the panel. I want to thank Paul, Gene, Danny, George, Michelle, Jeff, and I don't know if Steve ever made it, but I want to thank all of you guys for being available to do this. And it really is great to hear, straight from the horse's mouth, the real skinny on these topics that we're going to be bringing up. And so just so people know, I mean, I'll post I'll do a save the date or something like that a couple of weeks ahead of time before the chats. And then usually the week of, I'll reach out for panel people, because we're all day players, we're all working. And so sometimes it's hard for people to commit things way far out. So look for the Eventbrite link for the information and the topic. And then just a few days before, I'll post who's going to be on the panel. And I would love to get people who are, today's panel was very LA centric, because these are the people I could reach out to. But I would love to get panelists from around the world to all share your experiences with this. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody being here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.